My sister banned me from her wedding, claiming her fiancé has feelings for me. Now he's refusing to marry her over it. Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle, 20F, and I would greatly appreciate your feedback. Emily, 25F, is my older sister, and she is expected to marry Jonathan, 25 meters. Between them, everything appeared to be ideal. We all believed they were meant to be together, and they had been together for years. However, things have just taken a very odd and surprising turn, and now their wedding is in and out. Why, my sister won't let me go to their wedding. Therefore, Jonathan has declined to marry her. Furthermore, Emily thinks Jonathan has feelings for me. I understand how crazy that sounds, but allow me to clarify. For background, I don't have a close relationship with either my parents or my sister. I kind of drifted away from them once I started college, but it's not like anything major happened to trigger a fallout. Since I moved out for school, I haven't really spent much time at home. I would usually travel or go to my grandparents' house during spring holidays rather than returning home. Simply said, it seemed like a better alternative than having to cope with the unpleasantness of being at home. The problem is that I'm not at all like my sister or parents, if that makes sense. We've never really clicked. I'm not truly a part of their universe, which is their own. They never seemed to understand me, and to be honest, they never made an effort. They would all bond over something I didn't care about while I was growing up, and it seemed like I was speaking a foreign language anytime I brought up something I was interested in. They would simply listen, nod, then return the conversation to their own interests, so I gave up trying after a time. But here's what hurts the most. They made no attempt to contact me as I began to distance myself from them. They seemed to be quite content with me removing myself from their lives, almost as if they were glad to see me go. To be honest, that hurt. Family members should be aware when one of their own is gradually fading away, but they didn't appear to give a damn. It simply validated my long-held belief that I didn't belong with them. I eventually only went to see them for important occasions like birthdays and holidays. Even so, though, I still felt more like a visitor to their lives. I would arrive, take care of the family business, and then depart. The dialogue was always courteous, but superficial. There was no genuine connection, no warmth. Additionally, Emily and I never shared the strong sisterhood that many siblings do. She has always been the family's golden kid, the one who did everything right, went down the route my parents desired, and blended in flawlessly. I was the black sheep, the odd one out. They aren't awful individuals or anything, but the way they discreetly disparage me shows that they may be true bullies. You know how some small remarks can have a profound impact despite appearing innocuous at first glance? Yes, I would get that. I eventually came to the conclusion that it was simply preferable to avoid them as much as possible. Why place yourself in an uncomfortable and out-of-place situation? The problem is that when Jonathan joined us for Christmas dinner last year, I didn't feel totally invisible for the first time in a long time. My family has a way of making me feel like I'm an outsider in my own house and that I don't belong. I wasn't treated that way by Jonathan, though. Instead of treating me like the odd black sheep I often feel around my family, he was actually kind to me and spoke to me like a regular person. I didn't give it much thought at first. It was only basic politeness. After all, however, Emily was very troubled by this for some reason. It's not as though Jonathan and I were engaging in a meaningful private discussion. We simply discussed a variety of topics, including travel, school, amusing incidents at work, and other everyday topics. However, Emily seemed strange about it right away. I tried to ignore the cold stares she kept giving me during supper. That is, until she addressed me directly later that night. I will always remember that she said, "I know what you're doing," and drew me aside. "You're attempting to take my boyfriend, even though you've always been envious of me." To be honest, I was stunned. Steal her man. I mean, even so, where did that originate? She refused to let it go, even after I told her she was being foolish and laughed it off. She insisted that I was being too nice with Jonathan and that he was acting strangely around me. It was such a crazy charge that I wasn't even sure how to react. Where the hell was this coming from? Being the center of attention has always been Emily's thing. My folks adore her. She's the ideal person. She's their golden child. So I understand, but saying that I attempted to snatch her fiancé, even for her, was a new low. Like I normally do with her drama, I tried to ignore it. I assumed she was simply being insecure or worried for whatever reason because we're not close anyhow. The problem is that after that night, things became strange amongst us all. I didn't believe Emily could have gotten any farther away. She seemed to be deliberately avoiding me now. Even though we were never close in the first place, she would either act as though she couldn't be bothered or give me one-word responses if I tried to speak with her. She would be glued to Jonathan's side during family get-togethers, as if she were claiming her space. It was absurd. Jonathan, however, pretended that nothing had changed. He remained courteous, amiable, and normal in my presence. What truly irritates me, I suppose, is how easily my family seems to agree with Emily. There were subtle clues, but no one ever spoke to me explicitly. Every time Emily and Jonathan were present, my mother would give me these strange stares. My dad, who is generally quite indifferent, began saying more about the value of connections and the necessity of family support. Everything was quite passive-aggressive. My anger increased as I gave it more thought. I've never been the kind to become entangled in the drama of others, much less that of my sister. Why would I suddenly get interested in Emily's fiancé when we almost ever speak outside of family gatherings? It was illogical. My grandparents informed me of Emily's engagement a few months later. Indeed, I was not even informed that my own sister was getting married. Finding out from my grandparents was a stomach punch. Even if I wasn't exactly expecting her to send me a personalized invitation with love and glitter, or anything at this point, the kind that validates your preconceived notions about your family's lack of concern for you, I suppose, I had been clinging to a sliver of hope that despite the stress and distance, she would still think of me as having been a part of this significant occasion in her life. Hey, we're sisters, right? I thought. We may not be close, but I am still her family. That was obviously too much to ask for, though. When I learned about the engagement, I kept quiet to Emily. I initially assumed that she might have forgotten to tell me, or that she was simply preoccupied with wedding preparations. For some reason, I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt, even though I realized that sounds foolish. I assumed that she would ultimately give me a call, or, at the very least, send me a last-minute invitation. However, days stretched into weeks, and nothing happened. Crickets. Then I got an unexpected call from Emily, since we hadn't actually spoken since that strange accusation over Christmas. I must admit that I was taken aback when her name appeared on my phone. I replied, attempting to sound informal, as if my own sister hadn't forgotten me entirely. She broke the news to him. After a few awkward minutes of small talk, I'm not inviting you to the wedding. As I tried to take in what she had just said, I became silent for a moment. Even though I wasn't particularly eager to leave or anything, it still hurt to hear her say it aloud. When I asked her why, she gave me the most ridiculous explanation. I don't want you there because Jonathan has feelings for you. It will simply be uncomfortable. I had to laugh. Laughed aloud. Indeed, it was unbelievable to me that this was taking place to begin with. Jonathan has no affection for me, and even if he did, I wouldn't have stood up during the ceremony to declare my unwavering love for him. I didn't even want to argue, because it was also absurd. I simply hung up after saying, "Have a great wedding and happy marriage." It didn't really matter to me whether or not I was a part of her special day, because I didn't need that turmoil in my life, and to be honest, we weren't close. Emily and I were living in two entirely separate universes, and I had long since accepted this. However, I simply needed to let things out and perhaps gain some external insight. Am I the only one who thinks this whole thing is crazy? Have any of you had a similar situation? I would appreciate any guidance. Update 1. I need to write this all down while it's still fresh in my head, since yesterday was completely crazy. Emily's rehearsal dinner descended into total mayhem, and I was somehow pulled into the center of it all. My phone started exploding when I was spending a typical Thursday night cuddled up with my laptop, working on an assignment. I chose to ignore it at first. Lately, I've gotten fairly adept at that. However, in less than 10 minutes, I saw that I had 7 missed calls from my dad. My dad doesn't call more than once. Now, he's the kind that assumes you're busy if you don't respond right away and will try again later. 7 calls. Then there was clearly a problem. He was trembling when I finally answered. He sounded like someone I had never heard before. "Michelle, you must visit the location immediately, like a broken record," he said. "Right now," he just replied. "It's about Jonathan and Emily." When I inquired what was wrong, "Just come, please." His voice was so desperate that I was a little alarmed. But here's the thing. I'm not attending this wedding. Emily was rather explicit about that. "Michelle, please." He replied, "Jonathan is unwilling to hold the wedding without your presence." I was halted in my tracks by that. What? My phone beeped with another call, this time from Mom. Before I could comprehend that bomb, she was crying, really crying. When I turned over, she kept saying, "Your sister needs you," as if she had forgotten how they had all treated me during the previous few months. Listening to her cry about sisterly love and family loyalty when they had been okay without me until things went wrong was weird. Emily then called in a shambled, hardly comprehensible voice. Jonathan apparently showed up for the rehearsal dinner and asked me right away where I was. He lost it when Emily informed him I wasn't invited, but it was more subdued and disappointed than furious. He declared that he could not marry someone who would treat their own sister in such a manner in front of their friends, the wedding party, and both families, recounting it. Emily sobbed into the phone. He claimed that after observing their treatment of me, he couldn't be a member of a family that would reject someone in such a way. I was just like Mom and Dad, he stated, adding that he didn't want to be around such poisonous behavior. If I'm being honest, a significant portion of me felt validated. At last, someone had witnessed what I had endured for years. In fact, someone had spoken up and declared that it was unacceptable. Emily wasn't finished, though. In between sobbing, she began outlining this intricate plan for me to visit the location and explain that there was only a major misunderstanding and that I was the one who decided not to attend the wedding. Claiming that it was entirely my idea, she persisted in repeating, "We can fix this. Simply come and inform Jonathan that you have no intention of attending the wedding. Inform him that you were never left out. Michelle, please, I can't let him go." It was all breathtakingly audacious. It's absurd that after months of me behaving like a man-stealing villain and being told outright that I wasn't allowed to her wedding because her fiancé could be attracted to me, she wanted me to lie in order to keep her connection intact after making me feel like trash in my own family. I let her cry on the other end of the line for a long time without saying anything. Then, as coolly as I could, I said, "I won't lie to you. Emily, you are now dealing with the repercussions of your decisions to ignore me and treat me as though I didn't exist. Fixing it is not my responsibility, but he'll hear you out." She almost let out a scream. "He believes in you," I answered. "Perhaps he trusts me because I've never given him a reason not to. Perhaps he has doubts about your true identity because of anything he perceives in the way you have treated me. In any case, I won't be attending the event, and I won't tell lies to improve your reputation." She was still complaining when I hung up. I then made myself a cup of tea, switched off my phone entirely, and took a seat to truly think about what had just transpired. My phone continued to light up with notifications. Over the course of the following several hours, I examined it and found voicemails from my parents, missed calls from Emily's pals, and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The entire family seemed to have banded together to try to coerce me into cleaning up Emily's mess. But what do you know? For the first time in my life, I was very sure that avoiding them was the proper thing to do. Jonathan alone had been able to see through their actions, not because of anything I said or did, but because of how they treated me. He had come to that conclusion, and to be honest, that seemed like the fullest confirmation I could have hoped for. Last night, I went to bed without using my phone, and I slept better than I have in months. For once, let them handle the consequences of their own behavior. I'm done cleaning up other people's crap and being the family scapegoat. My grandparents, who are the only relatives I still communicate with, informed me this morning that Jonathan is not returning calls from Emily or my parents. It seems that he has informed his family that the wedding is final. My parents are working feverishly to contain the damage. Emily is inconsolable, and I'm just sitting here, at last, content with my choice to keep my distance. I realize this is lengthy, but I had to say it all. I appreciate all of the comments on my previous post that affirmed my choice to keep my distance from my family. You were okay. Sometimes it's best to take a back seat and let others deal with the fallout from their own behavior. Update 2. Many of you inquired about my early years and the reasons behind my prolonged estrangement from my family. Since it's a somewhat weighty story, I didn't delve into it in my first post. But in light of recent events, I believe this is a good moment to explore some of it. The problem is that I suffer from social anxiety. I always had the feeling that something was wrong with me as a child, but I was never able to articulate it. However, my parents were traditionalists who thought mental health conditions were merely pretexts. They would frequently say things like, "You need to toughen up," or "You're us being dramatic." They would label me weak or lazy if I ever showed signs of anxiety or a panic attack, as if I was choosing to feel that way. When I look back, I can see a lot of warning signs. I had this big presentation for English class when I was 15. The thought of standing in front of 30 students was a recipe for a social anxiety disorder. I had trouble sleeping the night before, and I felt physically ill the morning of. I begged to stay at home and informed my parents. My father's reaction: "Your nervousness won't cause life to stop. Quit making a huge deal out of everything." I ultimately experienced a severe panic attack in front of the class. My voice began breaking. Some children even started chuckling, and my hands were shaking so much that I was unable to grip my notes. The room seemed to be whirling, but I was unable to go out. Rather than offering consolation, my mother simply remarked, "See, you made it through. All that drama was in vain." Everything was made worse by Emily, who was the ideal sister. She was the student body president, the debate team captain, and pretty much everything else that I couldn't be due to my anxiety. When she had large gatherings of her friends, people would remark that I was the weird sister who never came out of her room. I heard Emily say to her pals once, "Yeah, she's just antisocial. She believes that she is too good to be with anyone." My life changed when I was in college. My first semester was a total meltdown for me. Being away from home, adjusting to new social circumstances, and attempting to balance my anxiety while attending classes became too much to handle. I recall feeling like I was dying while I sat in my dorm room, gasping for air. I was almost dragged to the college counseling center by my roommate, who, bless her, saw something was really wrong. The first person who truly listened to me was Dr. Martinez, whom I met there. She didn't urge me to toughen up or minimize my emotions. Rather, she assisted me in comprehending my condition. Dr. Martinez suggested seeing a psychiatrist for a proper diagnosis. After a few sessions, it was like finally giving the monster I'd been battling my entire life a name. When I received that diagnosis of social anxiety disorder, it wasn't seeking attention or being dramatic, as my family had always insisted. It was a legitimate ailment, and more significantly, it was treatable. The sessions of treatment opened my eyes. I learned from Dr. Martinez that my family's actions were not only unsupportive, but also purposefully damaging. She gave me advice on setting limits, advocating for myself, and identifying harmful behaviors. At that point, I began to intentionally distance myself from my family, What really bothers me, though, is that my parents totally rejected my diagnosis when I tried to explain it to them. These doctors are just trying to make money by labeling everything a disease. My mother genuinely said, I was merely using big words to justify my antisocial behavior. Emily added, rolling her eyes. I made one final attempt to explain things to them last Thanksgiving, before all of this wedding turmoil began. I had prepared an entire speech on social anxiety, complete with research and figures. Michelle, when are you going to stop making excuses and start living in the real world? My dad interrupted me mid-sentence. I came to the realization that they would never change at that point. They would never make an effort to comprehend. They had an unchangeable perception of me as the challenging kid, the dramatic one, the problem, and what do you know? It was strangely liberating to realize that. It made it easier for me to cease looking for their understanding or acceptance. In retrospect, I can see how this tendency directly contributed to the wedding scenario, my parents' hasty acceptance of Emily's story without even challenging it, and Emily's rapid leap to believe I was stealing her fiancé. It's all a part of their long-held belief that I'm the one who causes difficulty and should be managed. Jonathan saw right through this. He observed how they handled me, how they minimized my emotions, and how they used me as the blame for everything, and he called it out for what it was: poisonous conduct. In contrast to everyone else in my family's social circle, who simply accepted their own version of reality, I suppose I'm attempting to convey that this wedding drama wasn't an isolated incident. It was the result of years of family dynamics in which I was consistently portrayed as the bad guy, the problem child, and the one who needed to be fixed. Perhaps that's why Jonathan's choice feels so righteous to me. Someone else finally noticed what I've been going through for years. Yes, that is the backstory that many of you requested. It clarifies why I'm not in a rush to make repairs right now. I've spent far too many years attempting to change how my family views me, to get their understanding and to gain their acceptance. I finished that, accepting that certain individuals, even members of your family, will never understand or accept you. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is to let them go. Update 3. A month has passed since everything went wrong, and I must now reveal the last portion of this tale. At least now, I can say that what began as a wedding drama is really finished, even though it has grown into something I never could have predicted. Emily lost everything when her wedding was called off. My new phone number was somehow obtained by her, and she shared it with everyone she knew. I was suddenly inundated with hundreds of hateful comments from strangers, her acquaintances, and distant family members. Guilt-tripping and downright intimidation were among the threats. The vandalism followed. Classic Emily, who used to do this to girls she detested in high school, was the first to leave eggs in my car. She escalated when that failed to get the desired response. I can't even remember how many times I discovered my mailbox ruined, my car vandalized, or my apartment door covered in offensive notes. She cut all 4 of my car tires and left a threatening note in her distinctive handwriting, which was the last straw. My parents consciously chose to ignore Emily's actions during all of this. Girls will be girls, or you need to be more understanding of your sister's pain, was their standard response to every event. They dismissed it as Emily just wanting to talk, even after I showed them security camera footage of her attempting to break into my flat. However, I was ready because of this incredible Reddit community, especially those who suggested that I install security cameras and record everything. I learned from the attorney you suggested that this constituted criminal harassment and vandalism, rather than just family drama. Using witness accounts, video evidence, photos, and hundreds of threatening messages, we created a solid case. Emily ultimately realized she had gone too far when my lawyer provided our evidence along with the cease and desist notice. Her attempted break-in was captured on security tape, which was especially damaging. She attempted to bargain through her own attorney, stating that if I dropped everything, she would cover the damages. However, I declined. This was about accountability and penalties, not money. The court case proceeded quickly and decisively. Emily was accused of attempting to break in, criminal harassment, and vandalism. She was given a permanent restraining order, required therapy, and a 1-year suspended sentence. Given the deliberate nature of her conduct and the substantial evidence of her increasing behavior, the judge was especially severe. My parents' response to the decision was expected. For destroying your sister's life over a few pranks, they accused me of being callous. In fact, they advised me to just move away if I felt unsafe. After I told them that Emily had repeatedly harassed me, damaged my belongings, and attempted to break into my house, I never intended to speak with them again. After that, an out-of-court settlement was reached in the civil litigation. In addition to the damages for emotional distress and lost wages, Emily had to pay for all the harm she had caused. Her campaign of harassment on social media had cost me a number of freelancing businesses. More significantly, the settlement included a knock-on clause that prohibits our parents from serving as middlemen or flying monkeys any longer. According to my lawyer, Emily's and my parents' concerns about their reputations played a role in the speedy settlement. It turns out that their concern for the opinions of their country club pals is far greater than their concern for doing the right thing. Since then, I've relocated to a new apartment in a building that is secure and under constant observation. My social media accounts have been closed down, my contact information has been totally updated, and my clients have been incredibly understanding of the situation. Someone who heard about my situation and was impressed by my handling of it even extended an offer of employment to me. The most unexpected result of it all, for the first time in my life, I feel liberated. The expectations and criticisms of my family not weighing on me. I am no longer the scapegoat. I'm thus Michelle, creating my own life according to my own rules. I'm neither the dramatic nor the challenging child. My life was actually altered by the Reddit community, who helped me through everything in court. Your recommendations on documentation and security precautions were crucial. When I started to doubt myself, your encouraging remarks kept me going, and your accounts of similar situations made me understand I wasn't alone. Remember that sharing DNA does not give someone the right to mistreat you. If you're dealing with toxic family members, walking away and letting them deal with the fallout from their actions is sometimes the healthiest course of action. It's about establishing limits and demanding respect, not about getting even. With therapy, my social anxiety is improving, but it's still there. It turns out that a lot of it was related to the continuous criticism and gaslighting I experienced as a child. Who would have thought that removing poisonous individuals might be such a successful treatment? I will no longer be updated now that this phase of my life is genuinely over. I'm concentrating on my education, profession, and creating a new network of chosen family members for support. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. You gave me the confidence to leave and the strength to advocate for myself. Living well is said to be the best kind of retaliation. The best closure, I would add, is knowing that you have finally advocated for yourself. I'm tired of being used as a scapegoat or victim by others. I've taken control of my life and will never look back. Reddit, thank you for everything, and goodbye. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My parents pressured me to forgive my cheating fiancé, so I exposed my dad's affair, leading my mom to leave him after 30 years. In July, I was to get married when I returned home from a business trip. 2 months ago, I discovered my ex-fiancé having an affair with the sister of my closest friend. I threw him out, called off the wedding, and threatened to throw away his belongings if he didn't show up to pick them all up. A few weeks later, I pawned the ring, sold or donated everything he gave me, and placed everything he left on the curb with a free sign. I blocked him everywhere. I called the police on him when he came hammering at my door after I had taken away his belongings. I contacted them once again after he showed up at my place of employment and made a scene. I also called the police on his family when they gathered in large numbers to argue his case. I didn't go all out for my ex or the sister of my former best buddy. I told her spouse that I had seen her having an affair with my former partner. The last I heard, she had returned to living with her parents after being evicted from the residence. My former best friend made an effort to persuade me to give them both an opportunity to clarify. What? No. She then accused me of being cold-hearted and petty, accusing me of destroying her sister's relationship. Therefore, I also kicked her out. I don't want to be around dishonest people who don't care about betrayal. Without a doubt, this incident festered inside of me until I let go of my parents. Perhaps that's why I was so hard on them when it persisted. I brought a date to supper with my parents last week in the hopes that his presence would prevent them from bringing up my failed engagement. I had been under pressure from my parents to reconcile with my ex. He's really sorry. Give him 5 minutes to explain himself. You owe him that. He didn't care about her. He was wrong. You're being unkind by excluding him in this way. How could you report him to the police? How could you treat his family the same way? His parents deserve no such humiliation. They are decent folks. He's struggling right now. He is depressed. Everyone is concerned for him. You have his undying love. He has come to his senses. It's time to mature and extend forgiveness to him. No, they continued to bring it up despite my date's presence. When my ex jammed his dick into anything that moves, as he does, I lost my temper and asked my father if he expected me to put up with it. I questioned my mother about her experience of ignoring her husband's adultery. How does she maintain her composure when dining with women who have had sexual relations with her husband for years? Does she want my sister and I to have that kind of life and that kind of man for her daughters? I inquired as to whether they were aware of the influence that knowledge had on my siblings and me as we grew up, being aware that Dad was sabotaging his secretary, which is why he was late coming home from work, being aware that a work weekend was a code word for a dirty weekend spent with a gnawing mom. Did they not understand that I am the only one of their 4 children who still communicates with them? Do they not wonder why they were left off of my brother's wedding invitations? Why haven't they met the wives or kids of either of my brothers? Do they believe that my sister is simply being dramatic and having a tantrum because she is silent? Really? In addition to congratulating them on the death of their last surviving kid, I got up from the table and said I hoped their conceit, willful ignorance, and suffering would ease their final moments. I left my date after that. Instead of using him as the foo to my parents, I ought to have saved him for a special evening. He drove me to the closest pub, let me rest on his shoulder as I got totally wasted, and then made sure I made it home without incident. He messaged me the next day to check on me and even delivered over a large Sprite, large fries, and a double cheeseburger via DoorDash. Although I haven't heard from my parents, I didn't block them. I've cooled down enough to feel regret after a week, not because of what I said, but because I can still picture the expressions on their faces when I said my final goodbye. I damaged and devastated them, especially my mom. I adore my parents in spite of their flaws, and they are plenty. I feel a lot of remorse about hurting them, and I don't like knowing it. Edit 1. Although I haven't read every remark yet, I believe that some information has to be made clear. My date was aware that we would be dining with my folks when he invited me out. That morning, I told him what I had planned for the evening and asked him if he wanted to go. I was surprised when he said yes. When he did, I told him that I wasn't being serious and that it would likely make him feel a bit uneasy. He simply chuckled and offered to pay bail if necessary. There you have it. He knew there would be drama in that restaurant. Edit 2. I have other folks in my life besides the ones I named in my post. My siblings are with me. They didn't interrupt me. Just a few days after I found out about the adultery, my sister flew in to be with me. I also had amazing friends who helped me move my ex's belongings to the curb, pack up my belongings, and even find me a person who paid a reasonable amount for the engagement ring. I only brought up my ex best friend, etc., because of their actions and words, which helped all those long suppressed emotions to surface when and how they did. Responses from the op in the comments. Ex's parents, being on the outskirts of my parents' social circle. My ex's parents are undoubtedly aware of my father's numerous infidelity scandals. They must have expected me to endure the same level of contempt my mother has shown me over the years. Commenter. You dislike your parents' choices even though you love them. Considering what you've told us about your early years and their current actions, it makes perfect sense. How can they continue to be a non-toxic part of your life? Consider that. What do you want them to accomplish? What would be the absolute minimum, and what would be ideal? Op. Although it would be ideal, my mother will never abandon my father and take him for granted. My father using discretion is another thing that will never occur. Knowing that their needs and wants would always come before everyone else's, do they really care about the humiliation they've inflicted on us? I don't think I should hold my breath for it, but I would be content with an acknowledgement of the hurt we've experienced over the majority of our lives. Commenter. Is it possible that your ex believed there would be no repercussions for him either, given that your mother finds nothing wrong with her partner cheating? Op. I understand why people could believe that. My sister was the only person I discussed it with when it came up. We were both intoxicated and high. Naturally, people would assume that I was okay with things the way they were. How could they be supposed to know that I wasn't comfortable with it when no one asked? I can appreciate that viewpoint. As of September 29, 2024, I haven't been here for a minute. Work and life have been hectic, so I haven't had time to update Reddit. We apologize to everyone who kept contacting us to request an update. Better late than never. I reason. In summary, when my parents pushed me to forgive and make amends with my unfaithful ex, I became angry with them. At that moment, I told them some really tough and painful facts. Then, I felt a great deal of shame. The remorse began to consume me. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who left a comment on my post. Even though I did publish for approval, getting comments from the majority of you did ease the burden a little. I made an effort to read every comment, even though my timing was poor. I was able to recognize that what I said was extremely vital, even though it didn't remove the guilt I carried. We also appreciate everyone who chose to send private messages instead of posting on the main thread. Speaking with you and reading your personal accounts of comparable upbringings made it clear to me that my adolescence and childhood had been painful and left scars that I hadn't yet healed. Another shout-out goes out to the people who harassed me about my choices, preached about the sanctity of marriage and the idea that men are simple beings with simple wants, and attempted to teach me how to be a woman, lean in, and fulfill my responsibilities by letting a guy indulge in his vices. Not to mention the sweet little chicken nugget who told me my reaction was evidence that I'm a serial cheater and that my ex should have used a cattle prod on my happy place. I would especially want to thank the men who promised to train me to be obedient and know my place when your wives went. It must have been difficult for you all. Bravo to those women for joining you and fleeing a life of pain. Now for the subsequent events. Shortly after my posting, perhaps a few weeks later, my mother left my father. One evening, she brought her bags to my apartment. She looked so broken and pathetic that I cannot describe it. My heart ached for her as I carried her inside and held her. It dawned on me then that she had no one to turn to. No one at all. No friends. No family. I can't help but wonder if Mom had been alone during her entire marriage and whether she would have had the guts to leave my father at that point if one of us had spoken up sooner. My mother is typically very calm and elegant, so I had never seen her look so shattered. I was astonished to see her like that. I forced her to share my bed with me that night because I was so anxious. My siblings all arrived to offer their love and support within days after I phoned them. Before long, my sister, mother, and I were all sleeping in my bed. She was glad to see that her kid still cared, because we did love her and we cared. My siblings had distanced themselves from the problem. My mother initially stayed with me. She was struggling because she was carrying the burden of years of shame, guilt, and humiliation. I didn't want to leave her alone and was concerned about her mental health. I brought her to a shelter, and we got her a dog because I couldn't take time off work to spend all of my time with her. I reasoned that if she had something to do, it would divert her attention from her melancholy. She fell in love with a 5-year-old mixed breed, and he fell in love with her again. I had hoped for an active puppy to keep her occupied. He is an idiot. He managed to push his entire head between the spindles on the stairs, and we woke up to his howling one night. To get him out, we had to contact the fire department. My mother, who now calls him her baby, obviously didn't believe he was at blame. He loves her, and she loves him back. After making some adjustments, my eldest brother relocated her across the nation to live with him and his family. He believed that she would be better off living somewhere she wouldn't have to worry about running into her father or any of his numerous women. It appears to be helping that he was able to find her a therapist. According to all sources, she is an indulgent grandma who loves her role. She sees the grandchildren every day because she has a separate in-law suite. According to my brother, the children are typically located at grandma's when they go missing. My dad, on the other hand, is still my dad. He has plenty of company. He invited me to supper to introduce me to the new woman in his life shortly after my mother moved. Since she had always referred to my mother as her best friend, I reminded them both that I knew exactly who she was. Another awkward dinner is about to happen. My dad made an effort to make it as amiable as possible, but every time she talked to me, I would recall an instance from my early years when she was around our family and inquire as to whether or not she was having an affair with my father at the time. He contacted me the following day to express his disappointment in me. It only seemed right that I disclose my own disappointments. He attempted to minimize what he had done over the years and even played the victim of his own acts during our little argument. I ended up barring him and ending the chat abruptly. He arrived at my door a little more than a month ago. He must have been a little alarmed when I refused to let him in. He expressed his desire to keep me around. Whatever you think of him, he is my father and I love him and don't want to lose him. He assured me that he would not have me engage with any of his women. We have had a few enjoyable and successful adventures thus far, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we can stay in each other's lives. As for me, I'm in treatment because I followed the advice several of you provided me. Realizing that you're not as good as you may believe is a humble moment. Going through all that history and therapy has been nearly intolerable after certain sessions. My only wish is to go to the closest bar and drink till I lose all memory of what I've just experienced. I'm using therapy to figure out where it all began and why I am who I am. One of the hardest things I've ever done, in my opinion, is therapy. I'm not sure why some of you do it so voluntarily, or how you've done it for as long as you have. It is helping, even though I feel like a crazy nutter for listening to all of you nutters in the first place. The majority of you have been waiting for this update. The number of messages I've received from folks who want to know more about him is incalculable. You all seem to be saying, "Girl, just tell us about the date. We don't care about whatever crisis you're going through in your life." Since my piece was not about him, I have not responded to any of those questions, in a roundabout manner. Though, I feel like I owe you all something because you all contributed to our current situation. I will mention a few things, but I won't go into detail about everything that has transpired between us. After watching a podcast on YouTube, he got in touch with me and emailed me a link along with the question, "Is this you?" It would be an understatement to say that I was mortified. I was too embarrassed to respond to him. I didn't even read the messages he sent me over the following few weeks because I was so overcome with embarrassment. A ton of screenshots of people's remarks were there. When I eventually got around to reading them, I doubt I need to explain what those comments said to you. After a while, I responded to him. As I previously stated, I have had a hectic personal and professional life, so it was challenging for us to find time to visit one another. He has a life and a job too. I didn't think we could develop a friendship, much less anything more, because we could only get together for coffee a few times. Since then, however, I've discovered that he is as relentless and tenacious as a hound with a bone. He persisted until we managed to schedule another date. After that successful date, there were others. He finally introduced me to his grandparents, who were the two most significant individuals in his life. I currently own a little flock of wooden birds that his grandfather carved. His grandmother feeds me whenever I visit her and typically brings food home with me because she believes I'm too thin. He is friendly with my brother and sister, and he even accompanied me to my mother's birthday celebration, where he got to know them all. He treated her with great grace. I had him stored in my phone as Cheeseburger for a time. When he objected, stating, "I bought you a double cheeseburger," I began referring to him as Double Cheese, which I ultimately abbreviated to DC. My phone still had him saved as Cheeseburger. I'm not sure how to handle the fact that he is an undercover Swiftie. I don't dislike Taylor Swift, but I didn't think he would like her. I'm okay with his using me a front for his Swiftie inclinations, just as he did with his younger sister and niece. Reactions from the op in the comments. Remark: this was an update. Now I hope the best for you. Request: a duck to accompany the birds. Ha ha. I hope you have a happy life. Op: he handed me a goose when I asked for an owl. LOL. Remark: hearing that you're seeing the cheeseburger makes me very happy. I'm hoping. Commenter: that you're seeing the cheeseburger makes me very happy. I hope that continues to go smoothly. I was expecting some news about the cheating ex, such as the fact that he's homeless and unemployed. LOL. Subject: he's not even a blip on my radar. Questioner: why do you even still love your dad? Ash: are you in contact with him? Op: I cherish my father just like I love my mother, despite her staying. It is possible to love someone and still detest what they do. I will never experience remorse for loving both of my parents. Down the thread. Oh commenter: in what way do you sidestep the query? Dad: do you love him? Do you adore your mom? Oh op: the things he subjected us to were abusive, and the things she made us stay through were equally abusive. In any case, I adore them. I will admit that I adore my folks. Sui: thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.